Hello and welcome to Odds Premier League Match Day 4. We have a lot of news. We have a great week last match day. Tom was this close to get his bet on Arsenal to win from behind correct. And we have the anti-Pep. I read. Who is the anti-Pep? Moyes, because 20% possession and they won at Brighton. Tom Rennie, how are you? Happy. You must be a happy lad.
That João Palhinha goal, though, I was so annoyed. I had Arsenal to win from behind at nearly 9-1. I was so confident it was going to happen. It was so close. I was so irritated by Arsenal. But there you go. David Moyes salved my wounds with his super football.
Well, and Arsenal, they were playing against 10 men, so the bet was already in our pockets. Remember, guys, to comment the video, ask any question to Tom as every win, and please like the video and subscribe to the channel. And now let's go on with the show. And also remember that we have a special offer with 1xBet, welcome bonus up to 130%. You can check right now 1xBet website. You can use the promo code below, Oddspedia YouTube, and you will have a great welcome bonus. A lot of comments already from Mauritius, from Ethiopia, from Nigeria, from Canada, all over the world, from the Netherlands. And everyone is waiting to bet on West Ham this weekend because the first game we have on Friday is Luton Town, West Ham. And we've learned already in this month that we should bet against Luton Town. It's going to be the first game at home in the Premier League in this odd stadium, let's call it this way. So far, 2 games in the Premier League, 7 goals conceded. West Ham are on fire in the counter-attack performances. I love counter-attacks, I have to say. So, Tom, 1.8 West Ham to win. I should take it right now, I think.
Yeah, I think so. Look, until Luton show us something, don't bet on Luton. All right? Every single week, bet on them to lose until they show us some sort of Premier League quality, which I don't think they have. The performance against Chelsea last Friday was, valiant, but it felt like a Carabao Cup, League Cup, second round tie between a Championship or League One team against the Premier League team playing their second string. That's what it felt like on Friday. And that's why I think a lot of Luton, certainly away games, are going to feel like. There is not a great deal of Premier League quality there. I mean, who would you even pick out? Tahith Chong, Ross Barkley, Morris scored a lot of goals in the Championship. At the moment, there is not a lot of Premier League quality there, and I'll be betting against them every week. The only variable here is the point you made earlier. First ever Premier League home game. Kenilworth Road is a horrible, rectangular, angry stadium, and there'll be a great atmosphere. Think back to when Brentford first came up against Arsenal, the atmosphere that night at what was then the Brentford Community Stadium. So there's a possibility they might score an early goal, defend for their lives, do it for Luton. Sure. It's not something I'd bet on, but it's worth bringing into consideration. West Ham have been great the first 3 games. Against Bournemouth, they should have won it. They sat back too much, having scored the opening goal. Didn't get the second that they maybe should have got. And then Bournemouth nicked a late equaliser. Beating Chelsea and beating Brighton. Nobody saw that coming, least of all me. But they're doing the thing West Ham did so well for 2.5 years under David Moyes. Forget the ball. Forget it. When you get it, try and attack. When you don't have it, get in shape, defend. When you win it, get up there. And it worked so well for West Ham for years. Last season, they weren't doing it as much for reasons I cannot explain or go into again. But they're doing it really well. The issue for this game is they're big favourites. 1.85 for West Ham is pretty short, the way West Ham have been for the last year. I would even expect that maybe to go down a bit. So as you say, take it now. The issue is they're going to have all the ball. The issue is they're going to be expected to win. And we don't know how West Ham are going to react in that scenario, plus the whole Luton Town of it. So it's a few things I picked out here. Number 1, take West Ham win. Number 2, West Ham with a -1 handicap. That's a 2-0 or a 3-0 victory. You get that at 3.25 this morning. Now, that is really good for a West Ham 2-0 victory. That also brings you 3-1 as well, which is the scoreline in their last 2 matches. Kind of bits to pick out as well. Look at the corners market here. West Ham are very much set-piece FC. So look at 10 corners, maybe even 12 corners in the game at both ends here as well. If you consider last weekend, Brighton had like 17 corners against West Ham and West Ham had 5. Expect West Ham to get at least 5 in every single game. So over 9.5 corners brings you in at double your money. I think that's really nice. And also be looking here at the former James Ward-Prowse. Fantastic in the 2 games he's played so far against Chelsea and against Brighton. Scored the opening goal, had a shot on target in both those games. To have 1 or more shots on target is near 2-1 for someone who is doing that in every game. Plus, he takes all the free kicks. So a few bets there. Nothing for Luton or West Ham. Weirdly, back to Hammers.
Well, over 1.5 goals for West Ham, for instance, a couple of goals. They are saying Harry, for instance, 2-1 for West Ham. Could be a good scoreline. And Eugene is telling us that West Ham has just signed Mohamed Kudus from Ajax. Tom, good news.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think his injury record is a slight concern for me, but you're looking at someone who can run at players. You're looking at someone who can be a bit of a chaos agent, a difference maker, play right across the front line. You know, maybe he could replace Antonio in that central striking role. Maybe he could replace Paqueta when he has to get sold to Saudi Arabia in the next transfer window. There's a lot of roles for him there. Hopefully there's a plan.
Maybe we can see a Kudus portrait next to you, as we saw with Scamacca, an altar next to you. Let's see. Well, talking about quality in the Premier League, we shouldn't talk about Sheffield United and Everton. Then, by the way, all 3 newly promoted teams, all 3 0 points. And Tom was very skeptical at the beginning of the season about their performances. They've been no good. And heading into this game, we see Everton as favorite, 2.6, also 0 points, lost to Wolverhampton. Aston Villa and Fulham is the only team with no goals scored in the Premier League. Perhaps this is the kind of game we should look for a draw. Or low scoring.
I mean, low scoring is what I'm picking out here. Under 1.5 goals in the match is 2.75. That's the thing that really stands out to me here because of the goal record you mentioned. Everton yet to score in the league. Did score a couple against Doncaster Rovers in the Carabao Cup in midweek with Beto, their new signing, the 6'4" striker, coming off the bench and having an impact. Look, Sheffield United, briefly on them, at the moment, a bit like Luton, until they show me something in terms of being Premier League quality, I'm going to bet on them to lose most weeks. I think that the trio at the back, the goalkeeper, the midfield, Osula, the striker, is only about 18 playing up front. Archer's coming in to replace him, is effectively a nobody at this level. So they haven't got a great deal of Premier League quality. What they do have this weekend is maybe the most pliant opponents in the country coming in. You mentioned no goals, but also defensively weak. The goal they conceded late on against Wolverhampton Wanderers was terrible, certainly from Jordan Pickford, who's a goalkeeper I usually really like. And we'll see how Danjuma and Beto get on until we see him in the Premier League. I don't know. For all good the performance was against Doncaster Rovers, I don't know how he's going to do in the Premier League when there's a lot more on the line. So, look, here, 2 things to pick out. Number 1, go the under. Either way, 0-0 or a 1-0. Don't see this being a goal fest. But Sheffield United just to win at 3.25. Now, don't be too complicated here, guys. You can't back Everton to win. You just can't. You just at this moment in time, you just cannot do it until we see a couple of wins. They've won like 6 or 7 Premier League games in the last year. So you can't do that. Bramall Lane, at home, bad opponents, decent performance against City last week despite defeat. I'm taking this at 3.25, Sheffield United victory, and then you can put in under 2 goals as well, and there is money to be made here.
Well, a game for sure not to be watched. Probably under 2.5 goals for Harry. I don't trust Sheffield United at all. For Corello, Everton's game in the Carabao Cup was not promising. Beto is the new Chris Booth. Akshay is telling us. Well, let's see if we have more promising games. For instance, Brentford is looking promising. 5 points, no defeats. So far, playing at home against Bournemouth. They haven't won at home yet because they drew with Palace and Tottenham. So perhaps this is the moment to get the first 3 points at home. But Bournemouth, they've been competitive. They lost to Spurs and Liverpool and got a point against West Ham. But again, at least they've been competitive.
Yeah, I mean, firstly, it screams draw. Secondly, look, Brentford are trying to cope with the loss of Ivan Toney and the loss of David Raya. And I think if you watched any of the Palace game last week, it was quite interesting. Lots of possession, which is not really the Brentford way. Not a great deal of goal threat. I think the goal they scored from Sharda was really impressive. But beyond that, didn't really get through on the Palace goalkeeper a great deal in the match. There is something at the moment that's just lacking about Brentford. And maybe it's a feel of, where do we go next after a couple of years of really impressing in the Premier League? They've hit their ceiling. Their best players are leaving. Where do they go from here? And there was a little bit of that in my mind, certainly in the game last week. In terms of Bournemouth, I was doing their game against Tottenham last weekend. And I've got to tell you, and you might have a different opinion than me on this, I have no time for Andoni Iraola. Like, it's not personal with Andoni Iraola, but he's just a nobody. He's a nothing. And he got Rayo Vallecano 11th. Who cares, right? He has achieved nothing in the game and has never worked in England before. And he turns up with his roll neck and he's like, right, I'm going to give Bournemouth my new philosophy. And they're like, what? And they're just going to lose and lose and lose and lose across this season and will be in a relegation battle. They had a good manager who was building to the future and they sacked him because of someone people on Spanish soccer podcasts says was the next big thing. Like, drives me mad, all that. And you saw it last week against Tottenham. They tried to go toe-to-toe with Ange Postecoglou's Tottenham. Now, there might be issues with Tottenham Hotspur, but Bournemouth are going to get beaten by Spurs 9 times out of 10, right? Constantly. Player for player, Spurs are better. There's a good feel about Tottenham. So, play a bit more defensive. Watch out for James Maddison. The space Tottenham had at Bournemouth was ridiculous last weekend. And then they've got Antoine Semenyo, who I think is brilliant. The Ghanaian forward. He was the best player on the field for Bournemouth, chasing a goal. He took him off. He took him off because he planned on a spreadsheet before the game to do it in the 70th minute for Jadon Anthony, or whoever it was that came on. So I have no time for Bournemouth. I have no time for their manager, and I have no time for them this weekend. Brentford, back them for victory. Double chance it with a draw, should you so wish. It's coming up to 1.8 now, Brentford. That was 1.65 earlier in the week. But I would also look at the under here. Under 2.5 goals comes in just over 2-1. Mash that with a Brentford victory, and there's money to be made.
Hello, Andoni Iraola. I know that you are a big fan of Oddspedia and Oddson. This is Tom Rennie. I think Alvaro liked him for his athletic, actually. He's from the Basque Country, and he did a good job with Rayo Vallecano, keeping 11th. Rayo Vallecano in the 11th spot.
11th
this
with
is
Rayo
like
Vallecano.
Winning a trophy for Man City.
It doesn't get you the Bournemouth job for me. It doesn't get you it. I don't see it. I see nothing.
Well, next game, Tom. Burnley, Tottenham, another team with 0 points. At least they are ahead in the Carabao Cup. They lost to Aston Villa, to Man City. They didn't play against Luton Town. And we have Spurs. You mentioned before that they have obviously a lot of quality, and they had a great start with Ange so far, apart from the Carabao Cup. So another option for not winning a trophy, for winning a trophy is gone this season for Spurs because they are out of the Carabao Cup. Should we back them? The odds are good actually for Tottenham to win. 1.9 is okay. They just need, I guess, Richarlison to score, apart from the Carabao Cup.
Take it. I mean, I've got some further bets for you, but take it. Near 2-1 for Tottenham to win this game. I'll snap your hand off for it. Look, Burnley, I've done this twice already, so I'm not going to repeat myself too much. This is not a Premier League quality squad. They have not bought a Premier League quality set of players in. I think of the three, they might have the best chance, but third bottom is still relegated. So, you know, a bunch of new signings. No one has really impressed me so far. I think they look like little boys lost at times against Aston Villa last week. People like Lyle Foster, good goal, to be fair. Turned Pau Torres really well to volley home last week against Villa. Zeki Amdouni has had some good moments. Josh Cullen and Sander Berge, good championship midfield. I could go on, but they haven't got the quality. They've not brought the quality in. And if you're losing a game and your answer is to bring on Nathan Redmond, I think you're already in great trouble. For Tottenham, you can see why the Spurs fans were singing at Bournemouth last week, we've got our Tottenham back. And I actually think the joke you told coming into this conversation, we all might need to stop doing it now, and I've done it as much as anybody. I don't think winning a trophy is now the goal, the plan. Obviously, it'd be great for Spurs to do it, but I think that narrative now with Kane being sold has moved on. I think it's now, as my Tottenham fan friends tell me, just give me some entertainment. Let me enjoy my Saturday. It's been awful to watch Tottenham for the best part of 4 or 5 years. And that's why the Postecoglou song with Robbie Williams' Angels has been so interesting this week. They've suffered through Pochettino's end. They've suffered through Conte and Mourinho and whoever that weird janitor bloke was, and Ryan Mason twice, and Nuno. Oh, just awful.
Oh, Nuno.
Oh, do you remember Nuno? Just terrible.
Even Benzema is angry with Nuno, Instead of going to Arabia and just relax, have a good time, enjoy the money.
Yeah, well, the less said about that, the better, I think. But, I don't know. I have a lot of time for Tottenham right now. They've gone through a real trauma and have come out on the other side worth watching. And I would watch this game this weekend and will be watching this game this weekend. But even if I wasn't getting paid for it, I'd watch it. James Maddison, you know this. I love him. I think he's superb. I think he is such a class footballer. There's almost no one else like him in English football because he's always looking up. He's always looking forward. He's always looking for that through ball. And when he gets on the same wavelength as Kulusevski, Son, and dear old Richarlison, poor guy, did score in midweek, though, to be fair, so it might help him. I think Tottenham could be a bit of a danger. I really do. So Tottenham win, near 2-1. Take it. You can make a little bit more money on that because Tottenham defensively pretty good this season as well with Mickey van de Ven, who's been impressive. Tottenham to win to 0. So Tottenham to win without conceding in this game, 3.75. I really, really like that.
You start liking Vicario, for instance, making good saves against Man United. He did. Better than Hugo Lloris in the last seasons, at least. Tottenham, Asian handicap minus 0.5 for Clément Corello. Surely Burnley to win their first match? Surely not. Maybe it happens, but surely not. If I had to watch one game at this time, I would watch the next one. I wouldn't because also Real Madrid is playing against Getafe. But we have Chelsea, Nottingham Forest, and this one is an interesting one because Nottingham Forest, they've been very competitive against Man United 3-2. Very entertaining game, getting ahead 2-0 in the first 10 minutes with like 9% possession. They got 2 goals and they were also very close and putting under pressure Arsenal. So perhaps this is a good game to watch and perhaps Forest can put Chelsea in trouble.
Yeah, really good game, actually. I would definitely recommend watching this one if you can tear your eyes away from Real Madrid because there's so many narratives in it. I mean, with Chelsea, look, they played well at times against Liverpool. Probably should have won it. They played well at times against West Ham. Probably deserved to lose it in the end, but at the back end of the first half were very good. And they beat Luton last week. Look, I think at the moment a group of under-13s could beat Luton, but it was certainly impressive. It was interesting to watch Nicholas Jackson have a performance as a striker as opposed to a bit more floating around in the first couple of games that I've seen him go left, go right, and not really look like he wanted to be on the end of things. I think we're talking about best player in the Premier League last 2 weekends. He can't really look further than Raheem Sterling. Looks like some of the old form is back, running at people. If Raheem Sterling's not running at people, then what's the point of Raheem Sterling? But he's doing that. That's good. The back three settling in, Disasi, Thiago and Colwill. There's some good things about Chelsea. Caicedo making his first start. That will improve them in time. Enzo Fernandez and Conor Gallagher as the guys buzzing around. Caicedo. There's some good notes about Chelsea right now. But still, the team isn't quite there. And I think they're still 5, 6, maybe 7 weeks away from getting to a point where we start taking Chelsea a bit more seriously. And with that, Nottingham Forest, to your point, have been really impressive in the first couple of weeks. Look, they haven't got more points than they should have done. They maybe could have won all 3 of their opening games of this season. 2-0 up against Man United. I don't care if it's Man United or not. You should be winning that game. And they kind of self-destructed. Rashford cheated for a penalty. Worrell got sent off. It all sort of went against them. But I tell you what, in Taiwo Awoniyi up front, it's 7 goals in 7 games. Only scored 2 in his opening 10 as a Nottingham Forest player. Looks really good. And if you see the types of goals too, the header in the home game against Sheffield United, brilliant, pulling off the defender and heading home. The goal last week, he wins it in his own half. And he's got pace, way more pace than I thought he had, sprinting away from Marcus Rashford, who couldn't get anywhere near him. At the moment, there are still questions about Chelsea defence, despite it looking a bit more settled, certainly last week against Luton. And I think Taiwo Awoniyi to score any time in this game, you can get that at 3.75. So somewhere between 3 and 4 to 1, a guy who scored 7 in 7 to score any time. Now that is worth taking this weekend because he looks really, really good. I do think both teams are going to score in this game because Awoniyi, I am backing him to score. I do think Chelsea will go on to win it. I wouldn't be stunned to see Awoniyi score first and Chelsea go on to win. But Chelsea win and both teams to score is a treble your money bet. I think that's worth your time this weekend.
Well, we have Katsanova also telling us both teams to score seem decent. And Lyle is asking the odds for Nottingham Forest +2. Actually, it could be interesting. Perhaps we can take a look at the Asian handicap market, plus 1.5 or +2 for Nottingham Forest. I guess is gonna pay pretty decent. You see, 1.4 is not a lot, but for you to lose the money, Chelsea have to win for a 3 goals margin. Well, let's go into the next game. Worse odds for sure, because we are talking about Man City. Man City against Fulham, still with no Pep Guardiola. Apparently, he's still out of the team. So we have Juan Malillo on the bench, and we have City with 9 points so far. Small margin victories against Newcastle and Sheffield United. But it's very difficult to find a bet here. Tom, I don't know how you do it or how you are going to do it, but it's very tough because Fulham, they've been actually, they got the draw at the Emirates at home. They lost 3-0 against Brentford. So I'm not sure how should we get good money out of this game.
Well, look, I'm never going to bet against Man City. For as long as we're doing these shows, I'm not sure I have done it, and I'm not going to do it because it comes in so rarely. Maybe it does 1 in 15, but it's just not worth my time. But I will say briefly on Fulham, really impressed with them having lost Mitrovic, having potentially to sell João Palhinha before the transfer window closes. We've got another day as we record this, so links with his move away. You know, it's been a terrible summer for Fulham in a lot of ways. So a great performance last week, really impressive. And maybe if it wasn't for Calvin Bassey doing a silly second yellow, they could have at least held Arsenal and got, could have held Arsenal and then got a late winner as opposed to a late equaliser. So was impressed with them last week, even though they let me down on my favourite bet of last weekend. So that annoyed me. But look, Man City, they're just a juggernaut, right? They're just an incredible juggernaut team. And what I kind of don't like about them now is that a few years ago, when you watched them, you thought they were going to score 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and you don't really get that now. They just get the job done, shut their game down, move on to the next. And so it's tough to find value. So always look at your Asian handicap. 1.19 is useless. I wouldn't bet on that. -1. For Man City, you get for a relatively decent number this morning. -2 for Manchester City, you get to about 2.25. -1 is 1.5. So it's tough. It's real tough. I mean, I might even look at, because of the recent scorelines of both teams scoring, if you take Man City and both teams to score, you might make a little bit of money here. But all you can do is Asian handicap. But in general, at the moment, I would just avoid Man City. There's just not a great deal of value in that market.
Indeed. Let's move on into sexier games. For instance, the late kickoff on Saturday, Brighton, Newcastle, 2 teams that are very entertaining to watch. Brighton, they just got themselves Ansu Fati. I'm looking forward to seeing him in the Premier League, as we mentioned before. Lost to West Ham, but we are seeing a lot of goals. They thrashed Wolves. Luton, they lost to West Ham, but in a high-scoring game with Newcastle. Also, high scoring game against Aston Villa in the only victory they got, but they lost to Liverpool. What to expect? If we check the odds, the bookies tell us that this is going to be a draw, but it's a difficult one, I guess, to pick up a winner.
Brilliant game. Brilliant game. This is maybe the one you should be watching across the entirety of this weekend, because Brighton, even though they lost last week against West Ham to a well-executed game plan, they played brilliant. Like, some of the football, the speed of it, the movement, the running, the chance creation. They had like 17 corners. They play that game 20 more times and they win it 19, right? So they were fantastic. I don't think there's any demise of Brighton forthcoming. That being said, I worry about them in this game because I think West Ham had a really clear and copyable blueprint, which was pack out that midfield, do your jobs well, make shots come in from 12, 15 yards as opposed to letting them in on the goalkeeper. You do that, goalkeeper plays well, you've got every chance of winning it. And Newcastle have shown a great ability in the Eddie Howe era to play two different types of ways. Number one, all-out attack, as we saw at times against Aston Villa. At other times, defend, be solid, get the points on the board, and deal with it later. I'm thinking about going to Arsenal last season. I'm thinking about going to Man City a couple of weeks ago. I'm thinking about games at home against the likes of Luton Town, or when they came to West Ham last year, and they hit West Ham on the counter-attack over and over and over again. So I think they can go and win this game, Newcastle United. And I just wonder whether Roberto De Zerbi has to tweak that all-out attack game plan, because if you are playing Newcastle and they've got Alexander Isak and Harvey Barnes on the break, you can't push everyone but one or two people forward. If Benrahma and Bowen can do it to you, then Isak and Barnes can do it to you. So there's trouble there. So it's real even. If you pick a winner here, you fancy Brighton, you fancy Newcastle, more power to you. They're both pretty decent odds for these two teams. I personally am going to be backing Newcastle to win at 2.63. Is really, really nice. And I really like the look of this Newcastle United team, despite the travails of last week. One thing I was looking at is the amount of corners in the game between Newcastle and Liverpool, and the game between Brighton and West Ham. Brighton had, I think, 17 odd corners, and West Ham had 5. Over 12 corners in this match. If you're picking out something you fancy, sorry to go a bit Alvaro here, that brings you in at 2.5. So really good numbers for an amount of corners, which I feel is going to come in. The other element here, I think Newcastle are going to do the same that West Ham did. I think they'll stop Brighton scoring. They'll hit them on the counter. Newcastle win, and over 2.5 goals in this match brings you in at 3.25. That is 1-2, 1-3, 1-4, 2-3. I really fancy that. High scoring, definitely. And I'm going to plump for Newcastle.
Nice one. You know that this is a difficult one, even when we see the comments, no? Joseph, Newcastle must win, but then we have Krutzen, Brighton all the way. We have Harry telling us a draw and over 3.5 goals. Well, that's a lot. This is a 2-all. Corello going for the corner market. So everyone here has an opinion, and this is reflected by the odds. Actually, very level, very balanced. It's going to be a great game on Saturday evening. On Sunday, we have Crystal Palace Wolves. We cannot be as excited as for the Brighton Newcastle. Probably this is going to be a low scoring game, but we have Crystal Palace with 4 points thanks to the draw that they got against Brentford, and Wolverhampton, they got the first victory, a bit lucky, against Everton. Tom, Palace to win, low scoring game, 1-0, something like this, something to avoid watching.
Yeah, you've done it. That's it. Move on. No, I mean, yeah, that's what's going to happen. Absolutely. Look, 2 goals each for the two teams in the 3 games so far. Not a great deal of goal threat to be spread around. Still no Elise for Palace. Eze hasn't quite got to those levels I was hoping for at the start of the season. Mateta scored in midweek, but I don't think he comes in. Eduardo scored against Sheffield United, but I'm not sure he's good enough. They're very solid. They're very good. They're very professional, but not particularly threatening. For Wolves, I thought they were great against Manchester United. We all did, but they haven't really given us an all-round performance as yet this season, Wolves. I think that defensively, they are weak. Offensively, having sold Mateus Nunes to Man City, they can't replace him, with some nonsense guy they've signed on loan or something from Man City. It means nothing. Doyle or whatever, who cares? So I think they've been significantly weakened. Not a great deal of goal threat. Under, absolutely. If you're picking a winner, go for Crystal Palace. Under 2.5. That'll bring you in around 3.75. But also, I don't discount the draw here. 1-1 draw, screams it, both teams score, but draw on its own, 3.4, 3.5. Take it, move on.
Well, we have Corello telling us in Tom's voice, scream draw, scream draw. There you have it.
It screams a draw. It screams draw. Look at it. Screams it.
Next game. We have 2 games left, and both are really good. Actually, Liverpool Aston Villa is the first one. Perhaps also screams Liverpool to get a red card. Why not? We've seen it twice already this season. 7 points. This is a good start for Liverpool. Last season start was really poor, and the victory against Newcastle was great, with Núñez scoring a brace despite playing with 10 men. Aston Villa, after the defeat against Newcastle, they won comfortably against Everton, and they are scoring a lot of goals. Aston Villa, this is strange for Emery. Tom, what to expect here? Goals?
Love this game. Yeah, love it. Love this game. Love goals. Lots to pick out from it as well. Teams that have impressed, but also got massive deficiencies. And you mentioned it. Aston Villa are the second top scorers in the Premier League at this point, behind Brighton Hove Albion, which is incredible. As you say, it's very un-Emery, but also conceding a lot as well. Real doubts for me about Diego Carlos. I mean, I know that he was a good defender 2 years ago, but coming back from the injury that he had, losing Tyrone Mings, last week I thought him and Pau Torres looked a poor partnership at Burnley. And the way Torres got turned by Lyle Foster as well of Burnley was a concern for Emery as well. But let's start with Liverpool briefly. Look, what a win. What a win last week against Newcastle United. A bit like Brighton West Ham, though. If you'd have played that 20 times, Newcastle would have won it 19 times. Defensively, I was impressed. Midfield, I think, looked pretty bare and sparse and empty. Wasn't particularly impressed by their new midfield, Liverpool. And offensively, apart from Luis Diaz, didn't quite get there. Mo Salah, how threatening was he in front of goal? Might be becoming more of an assist maker than a goal scorer at this moment in his career. And that leads a great opening to Darwin Núñez, who, I mean, the finishes are brilliant. But the trouble is, he only does it against Newcastle. You know, are we going to see him do it week in, week out for Liverpool, as we'd hoped at the start of last season? So some green shoots at Liverpool, but still nowhere near the finished article as yet. For Aston Villa, you know I fancied them from the start of the season. I love Ollie Watkins. I think he's terrific. I think Moussa Diaby from Leverkusen is a sensational footballer. Offensively very strong. Midfield looks solid. My only doubts about them are centre-half, really. And I think Emi Martinez remains out as well for Villa, at least at last check. And so Robin Olsen in goal, that makes me worry. So what do you got here? Well, I really like the fact that Liverpool keep conceding early goals in games, then coming on to win them, a little bit like Arsenal. And so I'm going to go for it again this weekend. Liverpool win from behind. Oh. Liverpool win this game from behind brings you in at 7.5. The exact same odds as last weekend. And folks, we were this close. We were this close to a sensational bet last weekend that just fell apart, but it's not dented my confidence. Liverpool win from behind, 7.5. The reason I think that is because Villa are going to be strong in the first half. Get Villa to win just the first half, 2.5. So 1-0 up at halftime, Aston Villa at Anfield. We can all see that. We've seen it millions of times over. So I really like that one. And that would mean for Liverpool to win, in my scenario, both teams score. So Liverpool win, both teams score, 2.75. You can see the narrative of this game. I've already got in my head. There's ways we can make money off it, and that's what we should do.
Klopp, Emery, go home already. Tom knows how the game is gonna be. Joseph Bangura is telling us the same, actually. Liverpool to win and both teams to score. Everyone agrees that this should be both teams to score and an over. 2.5 goals. And Shushant is telling us, watch out for Darwinator. Darwin Núñez right now is Darwinator. let's see if we have to watch out for Nunez, Darwinator. Yeah. And the last game is a Champions League clash, but with teams in trouble or with problems. Not in trouble, but with problems. Arsenal, Man United. It was a great Saturday, actually, the last one, watching both games at the same time with both teams conceding, then coming back, not playing great, but they have a lot of quality players. There are problems that you, Tom, I'm sure are going to analyze in both ends, especially in the midfield. Is not creating enough, no? Not playing really fast.
Lots of problems. I mean, I could do an hour and have done several hours on these two teams' problems in the last week or so.
3 minutes. 3 minutes, 5 minutes.
Okay, keep it tight. Keep it tight. So, look, Arsenal's issues are as follows. Number one, there is no striker at the club that Mikel Arteta sees as his number one striker. Jesus is not a striker. He is a forward player, and he's coming back from yet another long-term injury. And Nketiah getting dropped last week was bizarre. And they spent all their money on Declan Rice, brilliant, and Kai Havertz, who they just simply did not need in any way. You add that to the fact at fullback, Timber is injured, Zinchenko is injured, and they're playing Kivior on one side and Partey on the other. Huge issues at fullback with Arsenal. Neither are fullbacks who can tuck in. And so there are issues there all over the field for Arsenal to solve. And at the moment, they're short of one or two players. The transfer window's closing, and they've blown their money on Kai Havertz, who, again, they did not need. In terms of Manchester United, still haven't seen Rasmus Højlund. We're led to believe he should be in the squad for this game. It's clear the attack needs to be built around a central striker. They haven't had one the entire time Erik ten Hag has been there. Martial played again last week and was the usual ineffective nonsense we've seen for a long time. Though it was good to see Rashford out on the far side. Casemiro looked great at times last season, but he can't move. He cannot move in the same way that Rice moves and Rodri moves and Douglas Luiz, I really like, moves. You've got to be able to get around in that position. And he can't. He reads the game better than anybody, but he can't get around. And so if you are three players running at Casemiro, it doesn't matter how good you can read the game, they're going to run past you. And if you can't hack them down because he can't catch them, there's no point in Casemiro. So issues in midfield, issues in defence, issues up front for Erik ten Hag to solve. So could be a real chaos game, this one. Firstly, in terms of putting some money on it, Arsenal to win at 1.8, 1.87, near 2-1. You don't see a great deal of that this season, so I would certainly suggest looking at it. I hadn't seen the Man United odds till right now. I didn't think they were going to be that far away, to be honest. So I didn't build this in advance, but just seeing that at 4.5 for Manchester United.
It looks better for me.
I have been dragged in by looking at the odds this morning. I just didn't look at it the other day because I didn't consider it. But 4.5 for a Manchester United win. I'm tempted right now. I don't think I've ever seen it, Ed. It's incredible. So maybe that. I do fancy Arsenal, though, but still, I'm getting drawn. Arsenal to win and both teams score. I think both teams score in this game. That brings you in at 3-1 as opposed to 1.8, 1.9, which is too low. Both teams to score in a draw, I quite fancy as well. 1-1, 2-2. There's been a few of them over the years between these two, but just the draw at 4.2 is really nice as well. And if Arsenal are going to win, who's going to score the goal from? Bukayo Saka might be their only real world-class player. I think he could play for anybody in world football. I think he's sensational. So Saka to score anytime and Arsenal to win also brings that Arsenal bet up to around 4-1. But I'm picking a whole bunch of Arsenal. Draws in there too. I've also been drawn in by this Man United figure. So bet on everything.
Exactly. Watch the game, do whatever you want. Both teams to score look like a good bet, like Corello is telling us. First half, both teams to score. For instance, if you want to spice it up and get more money, Arsenal cannot lose at home. Well, they could. Actually, they were very close to lose against Fulham last week, even playing against 10 men. Well, we have a lot of good games here. I hope, Tom, you've enjoyed doing the video with me, the whole video, not like last week. I hope I didn't bother you too much. But just to finish the video, and in the meantime that we see both teams to score in the first half, by the way, it's 3.75. It's really nice. Good odds. Really let's check your safe bet.
Well, my safe bet is Manchester City, obviously, to win, but there's just no value in that at all. So add a handicap, be conservative, as it's a safe bet, -1. It's still 1.25. It's still rubbish, but it's your safe bet. It's going to come in. You put it in the group ACCA that we do here. There's money to be made.
In our international ACCA and your Premier League ACCA?
Oh, I was so gutted last week. I nearly had 3 in a row. I had one result missing last week, which was Brighton. So that means I'm going West Ham this week after they upset me last week. A 3-victory ACCA with 2 away teams this week. But I really fancy this. West Ham go to Luton and win. Man City beat Fulham, obviously. And then Tottenham go to Burnley and win. Brings you in at over 4-1. It's the most daring ACCA of the season. I think it's coming in.
Well, the odds are very good, only for a treble. I'm backing the favorites, so it looks very good. For Joseph is Arsenal, Spurs, and Newcastle. Well, if you have a treble with that, the odds must be really, really high. Tom, thank you. Let's enjoy this weekend in the Premier League. See you very soon. Bye-bye. Don't forget, press the like.